This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 160. With our guest tonight will be Jerry A. Lang of Poison Idea. But in the meantime, hello, Timothy S. Dahl.
Hello.
How you doing in the heat wave?
I'm okay. I'm doing fine. Getting ready. I go to Europe next week, actually.
Tell me about it.
But there's a heat wave there too. I think it's like 99 in Berlin tomorrow.
Heat dome everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And that brings us to my first story. So we know there's a heat dome everywhere.
Right.
So right now in Slovenia, the wildfires they're going crazy. I mean, there's a lot of fires everywhere in Spain and France. But now in Slovenia, the blazes are igniting century-old bombs. Relics of World War I.
Whoa.
Quote, the defense minister of Slovenia said, the problem is that because of the unexploded ordnance, firefighting units cannot penetrate into the fire, but can only act on its edges. This is why the fire is being intensively fought, of course, from the air as well. So last week, one of the unexploded ordnances, that's what they call them, blew up and showered Slovenian firefighters with 100-year-old shrapnel. Now, supposedly,
that sucks.
Nobody was hurt, but their bombs might contain mustard gas or other chemical weapons. So this is really a big problem.
Well, it's not the only thing, unfortunately, heating up in the Balkans. It looks like Serbia. There's some stuff going on, and I think Russia's kind of getting that going, just to kind of, basically to drain some of our resources. I mean, Ukraine. I mean, the latest analysis, basically, Ukraine minus U.S. troops being on the ground, this is as close as we could technically be in a war with Russia right now, because basically the United States versus Russia. And so then, of course, the Ukrainian people are the ones who are going to be the bodies used. But that's besides the point.
I want to finish the story about Slovenia. So in Slovenia, the fire is burning across a swath of Slovenia where 12 World War I battles were fought, and some 200,000 people died. So History
200,000. Wow.
History Net reports that those battles pitted Italian troops against forces from the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just one part of the problem. The U.S. Army Air Force dropped 2.7 million tons of bombs. Okay, mostly in Germany, but 10% of those never exploded. So along the former Western Front in France and Belgium, officials have long worked to clear the former battlefields of unexploded bombs. Okay, every country has their names, but This is the problem. Fires are blazing across France, Italy, Spain, and in some places, I think the heat might even just cause the bombs just simply explode.
It's the violent artifacts of our past that still haunt us. I remember once I was in northern Canada, but not super far west, like Great Plains, like way up there. And there was a grizzly bear that came on to camp, but it was a solid fucking like 600-700 miles from anywhere grizzly bears are, maybe 1,000 miles.
A rogue bear.
Well, it was confused because it had like an 1860s bear trap around its neck, and it was like suffocating. It was like some shit that was just like back in the fur trapping days. That was just like that was never cleared out of the way. But yes, running into some violent artifact of the past is
horrifying.
No thanks.
That's why I avoid my ex-lovers who are either dead or in prison.
Speaking of hunting,
exactly.
Big game hunter. What's the guy's name? Oh no, they haven't released his name, or maybe I didn't write it down. Sentenced in jail. FBI found him guilty. The Pennsylvania dentist was on one of his exotic sub-Saharan African big hunting gazillion-dollar vacation trips, whatever.
Rich guys with big guns killing.
He killed his wife, Bianca Rudolph, his wife of 35 years, to collect the $5 million insurance he had out on her so he could start a new life with his lover / office manager, Lori Milleron. He claims that she was just loading up like a elephant rifle and it went off in her face or something. But I don't know. The FBI claims otherwise. I mean, if that happened, he's very unlucky. If he was telling the truth, he's very unlucky that he was having an affair and put a $5 million insurance claim on his wife. I think he killed her.
Look, I mean, the only big game hunter that gets away with that kind of shit, as we well know, was Dick Cheney.
Right.
That was small game. That was small game.
That was small game. I guess William S. Burroughs was not. That wasn't big game hunting when he shot his wife in Mexico. I think that was
small game.
I don't know what was going on there.
Well, speaking about maniacs, and why is it always Florida? Almost always. I don't know. Florida man stabs grandpa to death, then chops off his ears and stashes them in his pocket. All right. So the 30-year-old suspect.
I think I know about that. Yeah, this. I know the story, but I guess it's on trial now. I guess, right?
Well, okay. The 30-year-old suspect claims he brutally murdered his grandpa because it was his time. So just after sundown in March, a Florida man confessed to police that, yes, he brutally murdered his grandpa with a baseball bat and knife, and then handed cops the dead man's severed ears.
Yep.
When authorities arrived at the home of 77-year-old Ronald Wells Sr., they were met by the 30-year-old man named Colby Parker, who was on the porch with Wells' bloodied corpse laid out beside him.
Yep.
The elderly man was obviously unresponsive and pronounced dead. So Parker initially told authorities that he was Wells' son and that after smoking some marijuana, the two fought when Wells suddenly came at him with a knife. Parker said he was scared to death and he had no choice but to use deadly force, according to the Orlando Sentinel. Okay, quote, I just had a Vietnam veteran attack me and I had to defend myself and it just got out of control, Colby Parker said. He's dead. I got attacked. I had to defend myself. Parker said he stabbed Grandpa in the heart 4 times. Investigators also found that one of the older man's forearms was bloody and had been partially degloved, meaning the skin had been removed. Later, investigators found a shrine with bloody plastic human ears in Parker's room. The family butcher was set on an apron that was dangling above the collection. So police quickly determined that Parker's story was at least partially wrong. And as it turned out, Wells wasn't his father, but his grandfather. Confused deputies patted Parker down and felt something soft to the touch while being firm in his pocket. Parker reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 human ears. Ronnie and Ronnie Jr. right here, he said.
Well, is this a copycat one, or is this one that happened like back in March? I think I reported on it.
This happened in March.
Yeah, I remember this.
Trial. It's going into trial now. It doesn't stand a snowball's chance.
I got a couple corpse stories. Here's a good one. So Charlie Howe Crooks, his body was found in the woods, or no, actually in a yard, someone's backyard. They're like, what's going on? Meanwhile, Charlie, just, I guess, a half hour earlier, he and his buddy decided to take their single engine plane. You know, they're amateur pilot hobbyists. Well, that plane radios in, the co-pilot, who's not been identified yet, he radios into some airport saying, we need to do an emergency landing immediately because we lost a wheel, and they have this whole procedure. But when he lands, Charlie's not in there. You know, they have all these like flight logs. And so one of the pilots is not there anymore. So they go, well, where's the other guy? And his lawyers, no one really knows, but he disappeared. But he was found. The other guy, Charlie, was found about 20 miles from there in someone's backyard. And it's, they calculated that he had fallen 4,000 feet out of the plane. So they don't know if he just jumped out, fell out, was pushed out. They don't know what was going on, but or they lost a tire and he panicked and he thought he had a parachute. Who knows? But you hit maximum velocity pretty quickly, and I think you probably die of cardiac arrest, or you're not conscious when you hit that ground after 4,000 feet. You're basically like a rocket noodle. I think all your bones are pretty shattered. You're flapping down there as fast as you can.
God, brutal.
Yes, very brutal. Very, very, very. That was in Raleigh, North Carolina, for all you who care.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Do you have one? I have another one here where.
Did you hear about that mysterious metallic orb that fell in Veracruz?
No, I did not.
Quote, may contain valuable information, meteorologist says. All right, so quote, a specialized team of the Secretary of the Navy of Mexico and or the Secretary of National Defense needs to collect it and turn it in for special study, the meteorologist said, all in caps. So a prominent meteorologist says that a bizarre metal orb emblazoned with a secret code and perhaps containing valuable information inside fell from the sky onto a tree in Veracruz, Mexico, just before midnight this week, creating a firestorm of intrigue on social media. So the meteorologist Isidro Cano Luna called the Mexican Navy to study the orb. So the meteorologist Luna, whose catchphrase is "weather is also news," always types in capital letters, and wrote that the metallic sphere fell on top of a tree, in Veracruz, a city of 600,000 people, and that it appears to be, all caps, appears to be made of a very hard plastic or an alloy of various metals, and apparently it has an antenna. Well, people saw it falling from the sky, and it emitted a sound but no fire. So the speculation is it could be part of a Chinese rocket that crashed to Earth, or then again, the meteorologist, in all caps, personal suggestion: do not touch it or get close to it until it is reviewed by specialists. It may be radioactive.
Oh,
no doubt.
I mean, it's kind of sounds like some kind of UFO that would be spotted in the 1950s. There's like an antenna coming out of the thing.
Well, exactly. It's so the update is, soon after the article was originally published, there was another post on Luna's Facebook making a final point that the mystery orb is composed of 7 alloys. The device was removed at 3:15 a.m. by highly trained personnel with specialized equipment, taking all the precautions and following all the protocols that the case required. The object is no longer in the state of Veracruz, and its final destination will be beyond our borders. Nobody knows where it is now. Metallic orbs.
Well, here's a different story. A family of New Jersey is suing a funeral home for $50 million, claiming that basically, the family's been devastated and there's emotional distress and all that stuff. Because as the casket was being lowered into the ground, they're like, "Hey, that's not Kyung Ja Kim, 93-year-old grandmother who had died. That's someone else." So they're like, people travel a long distance. We're all freaking out. I mean, yes, that's a big fuck up, but $50 million. I mean, come on, just because you saw. But also, I don't know how many open casket funerals you've been to, Lydia, but even if it's the real fucking person, once they pump him full of all that shit, kind of doesn't look like the person, even if it is the right person. So I wonder if that was actually her.
Well, you never know, but I have a follow-up to that.
Please.
Before we cap this off. So, morgue attendant uses testicles from corpses to help win annual spaghetti cook-off.
What?
Carterville, Illinois. Linda Anders, 41, has been a participant in Carterville's annual spaghetti cook-off for the past 12 years. In those dozen years, the highest she ever placed was second, and she knew that second was just the first place loser. So for 2022 and lucky contest number 13, Linda used a secret ingredient that she was sure would give her the extra edge and earn herself the blue ribbon she so desired. So Anders worked as a morgue assistant for County Williamson. For the 11 months leading up to the cook-off, she would collected the testes.
Real.
It is real. She collected the testes from deceased adult males. She'd slice them, dice them, and sew them up without attracting attention. Because who's going to notice a missing ball of a dead man or two? Anyway.
Right.
Well, the night before the cook-off, Linda was hard at work preparing her sauce and dropping bowls. The next day, the judges went around tasting all the contestants' entries, but her table had the most attention. Judges were going back for second helpings, maybe even third helpings. So only there was a problem. A problem occurred on that third plate of spaghetti that would derail all of Linda Andrews' dreams. The problem? A prosthetic testicle.
Oh, which are known as nudicles. All right,
okay, so the judge chomped down on a meatball, and the silicone rubber testicle, or nudicle, filled with saline, exploded into his mouth, and the jig was up. Upon closer inspection of Anders' meatballs, the discovery was made. The meatballs were not meatballs in the traditional sense, but human testicles. Anders was arrested on the site without incident. When asked if she would like an attorney, she would only respond by inquiring if she had won the cook-off. looks like she dropped the ball when it came to quality control. But for the next 10 or 15 years.
Well, she is officially quote unquote nuts. And I guess her meal was spaghetti and balls.
But the only better way for that to end is if someone went for second helpings, goes, wait a minute, I recognize that taste. Those are my balls.
Well, no, these are from deceased people.
Well, that would make it even weirder.
You wake up and you don't notice you don't have testicles, and then you're eating them. Yeah, that would make it weird. I mean, the thing about so supposedly when a guy gets kicked in the nuts, what's really going on there? And he's like, oh my God.
It hurts.
Well, you basically each testicle is like it's like a giant or a mini ball of yarn, but like 200 feet of like microtubes rolled up, and then you have this membrane around them. And the thing is, like when you get kicked or hit, it's all that all those tubes swelling up, and the membrane doesn't move, so it's just like So in a weird way, it's kind of like an art piece where you have these like spaghetti and balls, and then like underneath the membranes, like this huge rolled up like angel hair spaghetti or something.
Well,
that's how I'm trying to envision it all.
Well, speaking of somebody that has balls, that would be our next guest.
Yes, it's true.
Jerry A. Lang of Poison Idea has written a 3-volume autobiography of his life as he has lived it. Highly recommended, and he's going to read a couple of pieces for us today. So without any further ado, this is the Lydian Spin with Tim Dahl and Jerry A. Lang. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our special guest, Jerry A. Lang, who's going to bless us with a reading from one of the 3 volumes of his new book, Black Heart Fades Blue. And I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you, Jerry. Please tell us something.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks for having me on here. I'm going to read a little bit out of this, and then I'm going to skip, and I'm going to read a little blurb, and then I want to go back and read actually 2 things. So you get 2 things for the price of 1.
We love it.
So here we go. Being part of and living in this little communal indie scene involved learning more than how to play music. As in the past, I would allow whomever I was hanging with deep into trouble, always imitating the atmosphere of my environment. The older girl who lived at my house took pity on me and would give me clothes so I didn't look too square. Her friend would help me. They dressed me like a little punk rock doll and cut and dyed my hair. I was schooled socially, as was what happening at the time. The scene did not suffer fools. And that's true. That scene, it basically schooled me. It was like I dropped out of school when I was a kid, and I'm going to go back in this. Other things were just more common seen, but no one ever told me. I didn't know how to shave. I was a rube. My family weren't hardcore racists, but a couple relatives were closer to Archie Bunker than Jimmy Stewart. The molester, that's a character in my story, despite being almost pure blood Native American, was one of the most full-on bigots I ever knew. I was standing out in front of the 76 house one evening, talking with a couple people, and the N-word casually came out of my mouth like I was commenting on the weather. Michael King looked at me and just plainly said, "We don't use that word at this house." That was all he said, and that was all it took. For years, I had freely thrown that word around. In an instant, I stopped and thought about it. I mean, obviously, being a kid at the time, I didn't want to look stupid, but also coming from where I had and the life I had lived up until then, and the way society and these people dismissed and laughed at me, I felt ashamed. And that was, that came from how I was brought up. But I want to read this really quick here because I got Lydia here.
Take your time. I'll read some too if you want. I got a copy right here. I wrote this from my heart, and this is we'll get into it, but I just want to read this. Around this time, I discovered a record that hit me hard, one that would have a big impact for at least a couple of years. It was No New York
a compilation of the no wave scene. I'm not sure what prompted me to pick it up, though Brian Ferry from Roxy Music was involved and selected the bands, and I'd been a big Roxy fan. I always wanted to hear the latest thing, what was going on. When I played it for the first time, it scared the shit out of me. I got it when I was living in my mom's garage and could only listen to it with the lights on or the door opened. It conjured up demons. It was the most insane, fucked up stuff I had ever heard. And I'd already listened to Captain Beefheart and Yoko Ono. When I looked at the band members, they reminded me of escaped mental patients or serial killers. They appeared clinically insane, like they had just had shock treatment. But the sound of the record and the packaging made it thrilling. So that record still, that is one of the most pure records I've ever heard. It's had such a big impact on me in my life. And I talked about it all through this.
Well, thank you. It was Brian Eno. And I know you're also a Roxy Music fan, as I am. One of my favorite songs is In Every Dream House, a Heartache, creepiest song. Yes, we did look like escapees. We have a lot of parallels, though, Jerry, which I want to get into. But let's start with your 3-volume monster piece. What I love about it, and I'm a very critical reader, trust on that, and I've read a lot of books by rockers and shockers and freaks in general, is the writing is so tight, very important. The details are so brutal, but what I really like about it is that which was my attitude too growing up, is there are things that are much worse, even though we're going through hell. I also like the fact that when you were young and being picked on, you decided that you were going to help the special ed kids. When you were a youngster, we both got out as quick as possible. Music saved us. I think it almost destroyed you as well. You're probably the healthiest you've ever been right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I wrote in the book, I got really obese and I had diabetes, and they started hacking off pieces of my body. And, you sign a waiver to remove a foot and then a leg, and then you sign a waiver in case you die on the table. Then you start thinking, well, maybe, it's time I stop fucking around.
But what did you stop? What did you do? What changed? I mean, we know that life or death, even though in the beginning of volume 1 of your book, you say that you originally started it thinking it might be a suicide letter.
Well, I wanted to just, tell it the way it was. So because I kind of did think it was, you get to a point where you think you've done everything, and you're like, it's kind of like a true warrior will fall on his sword before he lets his enemy cut his head off. And that's what I felt society was, an enemy. And I thought they were going to cut my head off any day. And so I was just like, I've done everything I can. I need to write down my story, and then I'm just going to fade away into, smoke.
So my aunt and my uncle both suffered quite a bit from diabetes, and they were both double amputees, very capable, very bright, but rage ultimately consumed them. Just feeling that they got dealt some bad cards, where it seems like, and I don't know you personally, it seems like you kind of went the other way, that you maybe figured some stuff out in your own mind and processed it in a different way. I mean, maybe
eventually,
or maybe you learned how to project rage and not let it just eat you alive.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Jerry, because of such an abusive, both poverty and alcoholism and fucked up parents who are too young and nobody knows how to parent anyway. By the way, reading your book, I started to have pains in my liver. That's how empathetic I am to your situation. I said, when you're 6 or 8 or 10 years old and you're living with a bully who you want to murder, but you don't have access because they've hidden the bullets, there was a lot of rage.
Sure. And like I said, it was this book was a confession, and confession is good for the soul. And once I wrote it, I didn't really, it was more of just like free-form association, just crying, just letting it go. But like you said about your aunt and uncle with diabetes,
yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, there's and the rage. And what I found out after the book, most people who are really very, very mad are also very, very sad. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I always thought I was just a mean son of a bitch. And then I didn't know why I was mean. But then after I wrote the book, and then other people read it and they tell me, well, obviously the reason is because you were very sad. And so it's kind of like a therapeutical. It's like I was like, oh, well, so it is kind of.
Well, also, when you're brought up in that kind of climate of extreme poverty, abusive parents, alcoholism, bullyism everywhere, just violence and viciousness, you don't know that there's something else. Like, that's the way it seems.
Yeah, somebody in Norway did a podcast and they were asking me, how did you, and I just felt, I said, I thought everybody lived like this at the time. I thought everybody kind of did this. And he just went like, no. And he asked me if my mother's read the book yet. And I said, no. And then she's still alive and she finally read it. And it's kind of, you get older and you try to grow, you try to learn every day and expand and grow. And she kind of I just saw this woman who still today, I mean, I saw her like a month ago, and this is the same woman today who would sell me out in a second. If she had like a guy that came and would say, and she hasn't changed.
Well, let me ask you this, Jerry. Do you know anything? For a while you went and stayed with your grandparents, her parents. But I mean, the thing is, I always think, whatever the abuse is, it doesn't start with just our parents. First of all, our bloodline is so contaminated with molestation, incest, violence, murder, madness. We don't often know what happened before our grandparents or even with our grandparents. I don't think anybody's made a natural born monster, but they become it from the circumstances. And when they don't have the outlet that we have, which might ultimately improve what we are by the knowledge of what we don't want to be, some people just don't have that access to a vehicle to drive themselves away from the nightmare that they are still living in. Wow, that's a passage in a book itself.
There you go.
See how you inspire me, Jerry?
Beautiful.
But also the Pacific Northwest, it's not like New York or Chicago. You just get onto a subway and just go down the street. I mean, it's
well, and a lot of it was in Missouri, right?
Oh, this was in Missouri. Okay.
No, it was bouncing back and forth from Oregon to Montana.
Oh, from Montana.
So you're feeling alone, obviously, at some points.
Especially going every year back and forth.
Yeah.
Like this is also a problem. That was another thing. You're always the outsider.
Yeah. And you know what? When I was living with my mother's parents, I found out. I didn't find out till later, after I wrote this again, that the abuse didn't just start with them. This happened for decades and before with everybody. I mean, there was all sorts of abuse, incest, pregnancies within the family, all sorts of crazy stuff. So, it kind of made sense. But I'm glad that it stops here. So.
That's
well, severing the chain of abuse is almost impossible. So you are victorious if you can actually do that, because almost no one can do that, and that's a tragedy of our species. When did you decide, I'm taking this to the stage?
Well, it's like I say, with the drugs and the booze and the living and the just going, just digging on nihilism. It's, you really expect to, all of me and all my whole little crew of guys, we all felt that way, and we just expected to end any moment. And it's really not up to you. You can throw yourself off a bridge if you want, but if you want to just expect to end every day and you wake up and you go, okay, well, here's the day I'm going to die. Other elements have different plans for you. And I would watch it happen to my friends all around me. They would be dropping dead and I would go, okay, well, I'm next, but it never happened.
Well, you saw one of your friends at a very early age die in your river accident, which is, first we have abuse, we have molestation, we have poverty. Now we have, adolescent death. Let's just throw that into the mix. But I'm going to go back to the question Tim asked, which was, when was the first time you took it to the stage? Take the rage to the stage is what I say.
Like as performing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It was covering up the nervousness with just doing the old Iggy Pop thing and letting it go, and kind of performance art, kind of just audience interaction, breaking down the barriers between the audience. And
how old were you? Because you got into music very, very young. I mean, before adolescence, even you were into music, stealing records, wanting records, waiting for records, and then it did lead you to the stage. So when was the first time? I think Tim's question was, when was the first time you actually started performing?
Or even deciding 16, you're like, I'm going to be in a band. And was it just heroes of yours that inspired you? You went to a concert that said, I want to do that? Or you in your bedroom, you said, I'm going to do that?
Well, you know, again, with me thinking that everybody grew up like me and everybody was abused, I would think as a child, I would think all children would want to be rock and roll stars, want to be musicians, want to be, you know, Keith Richards. I mean, who wouldn't, you know? It was if kids are like, I mean, there was a time when I was a child that I've always loved music since my mom said that I was singing, humming, screaming songs like Beach Boys melodies before I could make sentences, make words, say mom or dad. But you know, I got into sports being a kid in school, and I still liked music a lot. And then there was a time in like grade school where I made a decision where I wasn't going to go with these people. I was going to go with a couple of like the rocker stoner type people. And I just drew my line. And that was probably, you know, when I was like 11.
And how old were you when you first started going to shows? Like checking out bands you wanted to see? Who did you check out? I mean, did all the California punk bands come up to the Pacific Northwest? I assume they did.
Oh, even before that. How about starting with Three Dog Night, which, by the way, wrote one of the best, Three Dog Nightmare. That's a great book if you haven't read it.
The Chuck, what's his name?
Negron.
Chuck Negron.
Yeah, you know, I was locked up in a treatment center once when I was in my 20s, and he was going to go speak at this speaking thing, and they actually charged, which was weird, kind of, but it was a huge thing with like 500 people, these recovered people, and I don't know what happened, but I heard that he took the money and ran.
Well, you know, he was supposed to be at the scene of the crime of Eddie Nash, the Boogie Night murder, the John Holmes murder. He was at that house every night except for the night of the murder, which happened. And his wife found the bodies 18 times in rehab, 80 million records sold, ends up with a duffel bag, nothing else, because they didn't write any of their songs. You're doing a lot fucking better than Chuck Negron.
Well, he has half a lung. He's had parts of his body cut out and cut, you know, and he still performs, you know, the kind of casino circuit, I guess.
But
anyhow,
yeah, I want to go back to when you're watching Three Dog Night and the Doobie Brothers. I mean, you're like 8 years old or something.
My mother found out that she used to kind of blackmail me and say that I needed to be in check, or Santa Claus wasn't going to come and see me. And that was when I was really young, like 6. And then once I found out there was no Santa Claus, I moved out with her, and I really loved rock and roll. And I would go to these record stores, and I wanted to see Three Dog Night. And she said begrudgingly, you know, if you don't fight, just don't get thrown out of school. And I was like 8 or 9, I think 8. And she said, I will take you to the show. And I went there, and as soon as I went there, I kind of broke away from her and ran around, and I could see that, you know, I knew where this field house was. This was in a college town, Missoula, Montana, and for some reason it was on a line where everybody would play. I mean, the old Fleetwood Mac would play there. ZZ Top would play there a lot. The Winters Brothers.
I saw ZZ Top; they were amazing, loudest band I ever saw.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going from Minneapolis to the Pacific Northwest, you got to play somewhere. So
yeah, and there's college towns all through, you know, North Dakota and, you know, Boise, and so I was at this college town, and that's when it started. And then after that, I was like, well, I can, you know, scrape up my own money and buy my $4 concert ticket. So I started doing that, or sneaking in, and all my friends were doing it. We were all going down there. We'd steal like a bottle of vermouth or something horrible like that. We'd go down there and chug it before we go in, and we'd go in and just raise hell as little kids. It was, I mean, you still see these little kids now doing this stuff, but now they're taking fentanyl.
And dying. The last show I did with my band Big Sexy Noise, they had never heard of Three Dog Night. And, you know, I mean, I didn't like them. I actually abhorred them, but I said, just play a rock riff. And I did a medley of Three Dog Night, which none of the songs I wrote. Eli's coming, you know, Eli, I better come first. I'm going to send it to you. 2 is the loneliest number. And Mama told me not to come. That's because Daddy was coming all over everything. And they just had no idea what I was talking about. There was one guy in the audience who was like, I'm going to send you that little track, Sherry Lang, for old time's sake.
Right. Well, yeah, like I said, I could sit and, I mean, I have so many questions about, you know, your bands and the people that, you know, that came through here in the day. I mean, the Weirdos came through Portland at one time, and you worked with, you know, Dick Stenny, and there's so many people that, I mean,
we'll have our own interview after we're done talking about you. Don't worry, we can talk all day and night, all Three Dog day and night.
So yeah,
not to mention our Kiss.
Oh yeah,
what would be connection?
Yeah, Kiss connection.
But what was your first punk show or just kind
of? It was in Portland, and it was at this New Arts Center, and it was like, I think it was the band from Portland, the Wipers. It was their first show in Portland. They're a kind of a cult band now. They're a really great band, and they were opening for a noise band called Smegma, and a punk band, and a couple punk bands, and like an experimental band from Los Angeles, from the LA Free Music Society scene, with like you know, down there with all the duets and Human Hands, and broke off into, like, you know, the Dream Syndicate and all those people. But so that's what I really like too, because that again was more of a performance art, and they broke down the barriers. So of all the bands I'd go back and see all the time, like the Deals, the Zeros, all that kind of stuff. I like the crazy Sun Ra type
freak out
art.
Yeah.
So that was,
were you like 15 at the time? 14, 15, 16?
Yeah, I was 14. Oh no, I was 15. By the time I joined that band, I was 16. That was my first band, was Smegma. I just hung out with them so much and wore them down.
You became an honorary member. Yes.
Yeah. So I was, and then one day their bass player quit, and I started playing bass for him, and that was getting my foot in the door.
So with Poison Idea, I mean, what you kind of start out DIY, but what took you to Europe? And I mean, did you get a good agent? Like, how did that work? Like, what was that big step where you just started kind of just hitting the road and then traveling internationally?
Well, you know, like our guitar player was sold cocaine, and that financed our first single, and we made records, but we had enough shows. There was, in the 80s, there were shows here in the Northwest, people coming through up the coast every week. So we were happy with staying here. You know, there was like a lot of bands on the road trying to make it, but we didn't care. We were happy here. We had everything we wanted here. And we slowly started going out. I mean, back in those days, we only hit the East Coast once, like when the Pyramid Club was still going on. So that was later. That was way later.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, people just kind of wanted us to go to Europe, and they were asking, and we were like, well, if you take care of everything. And of course, when that happens, you know, there's somebody on tour selling shirts for you and doing this. And
what year was, how long did that take? What year did that, you know, so you're kind of in the trenches in Portland, and how long did it take for someone to approach you to even, you know, go to Europe then? What year was that?
We were going to, like I say, the East Coast, and California was right there, and, you know, Seattle, and we would do these John, I actually have the shirt laying around somewhere. It's like a John Holmes memorial tour. When he died, we had a picture of the United States with a cartoon of John Holmes and his penis going around to all the different cities we hit. And so, you know, and that was right when his memorial. And so because we would play Salt Lake City, Boise. Those were all through the 80s. You know, California, there's so many places in California, but like I say, New York was the late 80s, and then we didn't go to the Europe until like 90.
Okay. I mean, I run into some people, probably know some of the same people. One of these guys, what's his name? He does a sound down in Marseille at one of these clubs. Anyhow, he told me he saw Poison ID. He said it was the most extreme show he'd ever seen in his life. I think it was at AJZ Bielefeld.
Yeah.
And he said it was so jammed in there. And this, you don't really see this anymore, or a lot less, where Nazi skinheads come in and there's like a whole fight, and then just, it was just, the whole thing was just chaos. It was like rumbles. You couldn't move. Everyone's sweating profusely. I mean, I guess you have to be there to really experience it.
That leads to a very good question, Tim. You know, because with punk hardcore, I mean, even like I'm thinking about the Jello Biafra incident where skinheads broke his knee for because what? He didn't sell out. I mean, did you encounter, first of all, your band, you were all really big guys, but did you ever encounter any of that kind of bullshit with just, assholes wanting to fucking take you on because that's what they did?
I mean, it's like, it's in a way, it kind of growing up and being beat up by grown men, it kind of conditioned you to playing shows. And, if you walk out on stage and somebody flips you off or spits on you or hits you with a full pint of beer, you're going to hit them back. And all through Europe, that would happen a lot. We would get in, like, lots of people we would fight a lot. And the Bielefeld show, I remember, because I had to climb out a window in the back and jump out and run because they wouldn't let us off the stage. And our guitar player, who was really big, he started vomiting on stage, and the crowd, like it was part of the act. They were cheering, and he was almost like dying on stage because he was a very big, obese person. And then he leaves the stage, and this Christian guy, this German Christian guy, caught him and started saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He's like, do you like cheeses? Like that in my foot. Yeah, he's got like cheese. What about it? And he's like, well, cheeses is your friend. Like that. You realize he was talking about cheese. He's like, get the fuck away from it. And he starts puking again.
Oh no.
And just like insanity, these things, like, you don't forget things like that. Dogs biting people, the same barking, and it's just
saved by a Christian. I mean, that's maybe the first and last time I've ever heard of that.
And of course you're referring to Tom Roberts, right?
Yeah.
And Tom's wasn't an original member, but he kind of, for better or for worse, as talented as he was, kind of became the mascot. Just like a lot of bands will have these characters that have just a unique characteristic, for better or for worse. They kind of become a mascot. I mean, no, but people love him. They really, truly do. And so when he left, I mean, you kind of recognize what that lineup was and what kind of impact it was happening. You're the only existing member from the beginning. Am I wrong about that or not?
Yeah, Tom was in another band the same time we started, and our guitar player wasn't the best guitar player in the world, and so Tom just quit his band and moved over to us, and we moved the guitar player over to bass. So we, within the first 8 months of Poison Idea being together.
I guess what I'm getting at is, and I guess we're gonna have to probably pick it up in the second half, but you're so motivated, it seems like, just from the beginning when this band starts till now. And did you have time to mourn whether it was a member leaving, ODing, just dropping dead of a heart attack, or were you just kind of just plowing through this the whole time?
No, I mean, it's obviously very hard and very painful, and it's reality, and you can't really, it's like I wrote in the book, I sat there because I talked to Tom, and I was like, we need to get our shit together, because we were both pretty much full-time drug addicts at that time. And I said, let's try to get healthy and go back and do some shows to make up for all these years we were just playing for dope money. And he just said, he's like, I just want to become nothing. I just want to I just want to just, like the definition of nihilism, just nothing, become nothing. I just want to, not have a name. I don't want to have a heartbeat. I just want to become nothing. And I was just like, do you really want that? And he's like, I just want to disappear. And yeah, and he, and so then the morning that he passed away, I went over there and I was just like, I called the people to come and get him. And then I just sat there and talked to him. I was like, is this it? Is this what you want? Is this what you wanted? And I was like, I don't know if I have no idea what's after this. I don't know if you're still here. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you can feel me. I don't know, but is this what it's about? Is this what you wanted? And he didn't jump up and say yes. So.
Some people just get tired. They just get really, really tired. And that's it. It's enough. They can't, that's it.
We all get tired. And, that's the thing. We've all been there. We've all been there. We've all had the same disease.
Yeah. But, there's some of us that we have to prove there's more to life than death.
Kind of like a shark, it has to keep swimming forward or it will die.
For sure.
My spirit animal.
It's the summer of the shark. They've been shutting down Rockaway Beach all summer because of the shark.
Because they saw me in a one piece.
Whoa.
Just start right in, Jerry. Give us another blast from your 1, 2, or 3rd volume of Black Heart Fades Blue. Fantastic biography of the nightmare of existence, surviving through music, abuse, molestation, bullyism, punk and hard rock, post everything, and being a badass motherfucker to this day. Thank you very much. Jerry Lang reading from his books.
This injects a little humor into it. I've seen so many unreal, strange things that make me wonder about life. And is this all some fucking fever dream? But one of the strangest things I ever witnessed was having an abscess so big and so infected that when it burst, well, this was nuts. I was living at the Foster Road apartment. The abscess on my hip got about as big as a grapefruit and was bright red and burning hot from being infected. I was sick from getting it in my blood, and I was running a high fever, soaking with sweat. Just kept doing more and more dope to kill the pain. It finally burst open. It was winter, and I didn't have the heat in the bathroom down the hall. So I'm standing next to the toilet holding a cup out, catching the reeking pus that was shooting out of this little hole in the side of my hip. The pressure was making a high-pitched fizz screech sound out of the hole, and the heat from the infection was making it steam. I would pour out a cup of pus, then put it back to catch the next shot of hissing and steaming liquid that was shooting out in a steady stream from this geyser. The human body, I thought, what the fuck? Just when you think you've seen it all, I'll skip describing the death-like stench. Nothing death-like about it. This is death. Rotting meat.
That's a real thigh slapper, honey. Unfortunately, my thighs got no pus coming out of them right now. What the hell was that infection from?
Just being what they call a dope pig, just fucking shoving anything into any place you can get it. And just, the first time I heard, like, we were in Hamburg and we were down in the Reeperbahn and one of the German guys goes, well, watch out for the rats. And I said, like, rats? And he goes, no, the people, we call them. And it kind of like this madness kind of makes them like animals. They were just like, and you see it now in Kensington, Philadelphia, and
Vancouver.
Yeah. It's insane. It's insane. It's like speed psychosis from this drugs. And now with the fentanyl they're putting in it with it, they absolutely need it, or this Narcan that they have for it, it won't even work with this fentanyl because it's so strong. The stuff they're making in China is so strong. If people OD on it, they need to hit them like 4 times with this Narcan to bring them back to life. And it's just, it's a whole new game. And it's, haven't done this for years, not that many years, but enough. If I was on the street, I would definitely be dead. And these people today, we've just seen the beginning of it, and it's going to be so bad, with the shit. It's just going to be really an epidemic. It's going to be like a plague.
Well, it already is one.
Sorry, but when did your life really start to turn around, Jerry? Because you're looking healthy. You wrote your 3-volume book. And by the way, when did you start writing your books? Excuse me.
About, about 10 years ago when Tom passed away.
You have a really good memory. I mean, the details are pretty crystal clear. Who knows what you forgot, but there's a lot of detail in there.
Sure. Well, some of them were like, I was hanging out. My friend Adam Parfrey moved to Portland, and he did Feral House Publishing, and we would go out and party, and he was into drugs, and we would get loaded, and I would tell him these things. We'd drive past these corners, and I'd go, "Oh, I remember these guys getting shot right there this one night," and he would like, "Tell me about it." And so I would tell him, and he would say, "You need to write this stuff down." So if you tell things, of course, it's like I caught this fish this big, this big, this big. It's going to do one of those. But if it's like passing down, myths from your tribe, and they just keep taking on a lot, So
you began it 10 years ago. When did you finish? And I mean, look, altogether, it's about 600 pages divided over 3 books. It's a fatty.
Yeah.
In more ways than one. Mandatory. After each volume, did you know it was going to be 3 volumes?
You know what? I wrote it as one manuscript and handed it in, and they said, it's 600 pages or whatever. And I said, is that good? And they said, well, that's kind of big. And I go, well, can you trim some of it out? And they said, well, there's really no fat to trim. It's pretty good.
Let's say that again. There is no fat in these 3 volumes. And that is the highest compliment I can give you as somebody who's a precision slicer.
Yeah. So there was nothing on the floor, and and they said they're going to, do this in 3 volumes, which I thought was kind of strange, because that means somebody will be buying the second one, or it's in a library, and I don't know, maybe they'll say, oh, how did this start, or how does this end? But, I ended it it ended about 4 years ago. That's when I stopped writing. And it was to the point where I was going to, I was putting all my stuff in storage and taking my friend over there and going, here's the key to the storage. If anything happens to me, there's names on these boxes for everybody, because here's my guitars and my records and all my, and then I kind of waited, and then I met somebody else. I met a woman who didn't know who I was, had no idea, didn't know about, she grew up in California. She knew about punk rock, but she never heard of my band. And so she was just like, you're not a bad person. You're not a, and I was like, no, I'm kind of a bad person. She's like, no, you're not. And so that's kind of my life just changed.
Wonderful that it did. Really. I always say you can't save someone from themselves, but sometimes you can meet a person that can change your perspective, or whose perspective you can change.
Yeah, because I never had anybody tell me that, it was okay. And I was, I'm good. So
amazing. So, in terms of self-care and stuff, during your band days, I guess you weren't going to a doctor that regularly. You're just kind of like, I have an infection, I guess I'll deal with it in the bathroom.
I have an infection, get me a cup.
Yeah. Infection cup.
Yeah. Not to go totally comic relief, but what did the van smell like, say, come 1996, 1997? Everyone's in there.
There were some slaughterhouses.
Poison Idea is a band that comes up in conversations on tours with other bands. There's some kind of aura. I don't know, for better or for worse. The music, people love the music, but just the resilience and the brutality, it seems to be second to none in terms of just you guys. People talk about Lemmy, they talk about all types of characters who are resilient, but you guys kind of beat the odds, or you have at least, with the best of them in terms of rock and roll history.
Well, it's like I said in the book about being an asshole. If you're going to be an asshole, you need to be the biggest asshole. You need to, be the biggest at what you can. And the music just, it reflected our lifestyle, who we were. We were honest, and we took same with the writing now. Same with the writing is just like the way the music was. It was just no holding back, no pulling the punches, and just, being truthful and going for it. And we knew we were ugly. We knew we were loud, and we didn't hide the fact that we were drug addicts, we didn't care. And that's just the way. And, people try to like shame you and go, well, you're a drug addict, and go, well, I know, I said that. I know I am. It's like, so, but still I'm at least I'm telling the truth. And that was playing the music was, I guess it's coming from people who are honest, but don't really didn't take a class in music theory or how to write music. It's like, you hear a song, what kind of song is this going to be? It's going to be, I want to write the heaviest stomping song in the world. Okay, well, you need the heaviest stomping drums. And then in my head, I hear this bass that shakes walls. And then you need this. And what would you sing? Something, not something like, Thor's hammer or some stupid shit like that, but something that's powerful, And there's, like I say, there's so much truth around here, and there's so much stuff that you don't need. It's just look.
I want to go back to what you said, because I always said to other women, don't be afraid to be fucking ugly. Don't be afraid to be ugly. By whose standards anyway? And it's because the truth can be brutally ugly.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Absolutely. And honesty is appealing to a lot of people. Speaking of which, or dishonesty, what goes through your head, and how do you feel when platinum selling bands cover your band? Do you first of all, do you have to give the green light? Did they even go through you and ask you for permission, or
royalties?
You find it flattering? What do you think?
Yeah, some bands, we cover songs too. We cover a lot of songs. We covered Booker T, covered Jimmy Cliff. We've done Motorhead. We've done all sorts of stuff. We've done the Go-Go's, covered the Go-Go's. We covered stuff that, you wouldn't, but it's just, music it doesn't matter who plays it if it's good. And I guess that being said, I don't want to get into the state of today's music, because I can't find anything that's really, makes my big toe shoot up in my boot. It's there's, going in a roundabout way, people covered my music. Sure, let them do it. Some people, one band covered our stuff for a movie, and we did get some royalties, but other bands covered a song and they bought it. They bought the kind of the same thing we did when we just paid the whatever $2,000 for the rights to play, cover a song on a record. And not that we sell, thousands of records, but
so Metallica gave you $2,000?
No, I think they just played us live.
Okay, but there's still, with those giant venues, there's all types of ASCAP stuff going on. So I'm just curious. And also, didn't Pantera cover you guys?
Yeah, Pantera, and we got some money from whatever label, Warner Brothers or whatever. But like Machine Head covered us, and they that record went gold. But then again, they just bought the rights to do the song, and I think they paid $1,200 or whatever, and that was it.
The more money they make, the less they want to give us.
Of course.
Cunts.
Right. The capital K.
What'd you do while COVID was going down? And because you were getting healthy then a couple of years before the COVID hit. That's when you started, after finishing your books 4 years ago, you're like, okay, things started to change. And then we're in lockdown. Good time to get healthy or to kill yourself, one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's like, the book was going to come out. I knew I finished it. I gathered up the people that I played with who had their shit together and who were sober. And I told them, I said, I want to do 1 year and go to all the places that we have, like Japan, Europe, and play like a machine, just play so tight and so powerful, and kind of like make amends for all these sloppy, shitty shows over the years, and just, rolling through all fucked up. And I told these guys, give me a year and let's do it. And we did. And we played the world. And we were in Japan in December. My wife came with me. She saw people wearing masks everywhere because that's what they do in Japan. And we came back, and then we played New York in February. We played 3 shows, and that was the very last show. We flew back to the Northwest, and as we were coming back, they said, have you been to China? And we were like, no, not China. And we said, why? And so we landed a month later, COVID, and we shut down. We said that was it. We played our years of shows. And for Christmas, my wife got me a bag of like 1,000 masks in Japan. Joke. I mean, she didn't, because everybody's wearing masks.
Right.
So we kind of started wearing masks too, because we thought, oh, well, if the Japanese fashion, they're wearing masks, we need to wear masks too. And
I think all men should wear masks. Let me just say it. They should actually wear burqas, full hazmat suits, double bag everything. That's just my opinion. After the vasectomy, of course.
I kind of like it.
I like it.
It's
saves
nice.
Saves on lipstick.
So yeah, we got back, and that was it. We then COVID came, and shit, what did I do then? I tried to do like I did a volunteer thing with the Social Security office, where I was helping people on the street who couldn't manage their money. It's like a payee thing, like a lot of homeless people who didn't have houses. We started like a joint bank account, and we would get their checks, and then I would go find them on the street and give them money and make sure that they had things. But with COVID, it was really hard, like meeting people in the Social Security office or in the welfare offices. And a lot of people fell through the cracks, and it was really heartbreaking to be on the street and being with these people and seeing these people who not only do they not want money, they don't know. They just don't know. They just, I would go to hospitals, and the trauma team would pick them up in the hospital, and they say, this guy was almost dead, and we're keeping him here as long as we can, but we're going to cut him loose. And I would like go, please call me. Here's my card. This is what I do. It's it's a nonprofit, but still, I want you to, make sure that you. And I would put money in his hand, and he would just look at me and just like not know what was going on. And they would let him go.
It's so admirable of you, Jerry, as somebody that, as a youngster, or all the times you were homeless or totally broke, totally impoverished, and there weren't many handouts, that you did that both as a child and then continue to this day. I mean, it's really admirable. I really think that's just really fantastic, because that is part of ending the cycle of abuse. There really is. It really is.
Sure.
And people don't realize how much volunteering or just helping people in the smallest way both changes their lives and is something that is soul cleansing.
It's great. It's my wife is a mental health therapist, and she has a lot of low income families. And for the last 2 years, I've dressed up as Santa Claus for these families. And I went out and we solicited on YouTube and got money and went to these kids' house, and these little kids, the ones who actually believe in Santa Claus, it's a trip. It's like, it's better than playing, because these kids are just like, you can see their minds being blown, like seeing Santa Claus, and they're just like, they just go crazy. And it's such a cool feeling. I really, it's like, I don't know, you do stuff. That's what, I waited until I was older and out of the red zone, but I do stuff every day. That's what Lydia was talking about. I like cooking and stuff, and just learning how to do things every day, and working with people and cooking and playing in playing.
All right, let's talk about the cooking for a minute there. Yeah. Slim down.
I have not wrote a book.
Little slim Jerry. What do you like to cook, baby? What's your favorite? I'm going to send you a PDF of my cookbook, The Need to Feed.
Oh,
You're gonna, it's saucy. Yeah. What do you like
yeah,
to
I
cook?
love it.
What do you like to
Well,
cook?
I used to cook, when I was a little kid, I used to cook for my brother and sister, like, macaroni and cheese or whatever, stewed green peppers and, with like, rice and stuff like that. But like the easiest thing, is like baking bread is like, 4 ingredients and it's so good. And it just blows my mind. It's like, wow, this is great. So that's kind of like the first step. And then from there, make focaccia bread. You do this. Then the second is, you just keep going and finding new stuff. And then the next thing you're making beef Wellington or something.
Tim is an amazing meat man. He's a great chef as well, And the thing is, when you're on the road a lot, actually, there comes a point when you need to just cook for yourself.
No, that's how I met one of my best friends. I did an interview. Somebody asked me in a music magazine about what the best food I had on the road. And I was talking about the Basque country.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And this person from these bands in the Basque country read the interview. And so when we played back there again, he met me at the show and brought me food. And we started corresponding. And I've went to Spain and stayed with him before. And he's a chef. He's a chef over there in the octopus and the
yeah. Oh yeah.
Lydia loves octopus, so
yeah.
I have an octopus tattoo on my foot. I love octopus. I am an octopus. I mean, octopus is as close to Kali as you could come in the animal kingdom.
Yeah. Yep. This is
I mean, and the Basque, and then, of course, the French Basque country. That's a whole other a little even more spicy or something. But rarely that's more countryside-ish kind of thing. But
so do you do all the cooking at your house, or does your wife do the cooking? Do you take turns? What do you do there, Jerry? What are you cooking tonight? I wish you were cooking for me tonight because I'm hungry.
Tonight, I'm actually doing something easy. I'm chopping up a bunch of onions, gonna saute them and make some French onion soup.
Nice. All right. I always, there's so many musicians that you meet along the way who love to cook. And I would have these conversations, and at least my theory is, when you're in the arts in general, it's endless. There's never really a finish line. And where cooking, it's like you have a starting point and you have an ending point, and you can experience this thing, but it still touches, especially for musicians, real-time action. You have to be, it's like on stage, you have to hit the marks. You can't fuck up the timing.
Hey, I love knives. I love fire. And I love touching. I love knowing that my DNA is going into people's mouths. Yes.
There you go. But after it's complete, you can
Somebody
enjoy. You can enjoy yourself.
Somebody else better wash those fucking dishes. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, there you go.
Well, see, I like washing the dishes because it gives me I see this job and then I work at it and it does get finished. There's a time where it's completely clean and it's finished and I feel like I've accomplished something. I've done something.
I do it as I go along. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, okay, you have this last world tour. You go to Japan and then basically they're shut down. Is anyone knocking on the door right now as things are slowly opening up?
Are you going on a spoken word tour?
I would love to do something like that. I did like a book thing here when it first came out at this Music Millennium. And I would love to do something in the future. I'd like to find a way to incorporate the things together, the music and that I'm doing. And also since COVID happened, a new world of sending music files opened up. And I worked with a band in Amsterdam. I worked with a band in San Sebastian. I worked with a band in Antwerp, and we're doing stuff and it's great. I don't have to smell these guys in a room with them, and I get to listen to the music and I just go in and I write the lyrics and blast out the songs. And so,
yeah,
I do a lot of remote recording. GarageBand is my friend.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Well, I mean, Lydia and I have a duo where it's just kind of a spoken word mixed with the kind of rock kind of thing. We're going to go on the road.
Psychoambient. I call it psychoambient or
in
illustrated
Tennessee.
word. Yeah.
But yeah, combining those two, I mean, why not?
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, I think that's like, that's the future. My friends just got back as soon as the COVID kind of slowed down. I mean, they got back 4 days ago from touring Europe. And they told me that they completely lost their shirt because $10 a gallon gas,
Oh yeah.
driving 12 hours a day, these, and it
Also,
said,
also if it's a big tour, if big chunks are getting canceled because a new wave happens, I mean, you would really just lose money.
exactly.
I want to talk about some of the writers that influenced you, Jerry, for a minute, because I read that, in volume 1, you mentioned that one of your early girlfriends gave you like a Baudelaire book, and that's where the poison idea title came from. And of course, I know your fascination with Bukowski. Who else were you reading, and when did you start reading that? Because that's what put me on my path, was literature before music. So who are some of your favorite writers?
Well, you know what? I get stuff all the time, and I just pick up anything. Baudelaire stuff is like that, the trend in French, it's probably like sings. It probably sings. You transcribe it, it's probably kind of like listening to music, doing the same. I like mythology, I like the beats, I like Nora. I mean, when you had Kathy Unworth on your show, her books are brilliant. I love those.
Very good friend for a long time. Yeah, great writer.
Yeah.
Started rock writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Hunky.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Nobody realizes Junkie was about Hunky.
Oh yeah.
Diane DePrima put out his book, Guilty of Everything. I have a piece about it from Hunky's point of view. I'm going to send it to you with Grid's music.
Great.
The original beat.
Yeah. They're just like the books are like watching really, really good movies that you can add so much into with your imagination. Like the one that Burroughs did the foreword for, the Jack Black, You Can't Win. That's a great book. That's like the turn of the century, kind of like Junkie. It was turn of the century, about an opium addict, this thief in 1890 San Francisco.
I really feel like your books are really in the pantheon, should be on the same bookshelf of the people that you mentioned, Jerry. I mean that. Your book should be on the same shelf because they're important historically for what you lived through, and they're going to mean a lot to a lot of people that have had, ruggish, thuggish lives.
Thank you. Well, that puts a good feeling in me.
As it should. You definitely take it. This has actually been amazing, and you've lived so far a very impressive life, and it seems like you're making the most out of it every day. And so, obviously, you didn't grow up wanting to be a role model, but you've become one, for better or for worse. And so you should definitely be proud of that. Well,
and by the way, I thank Weasel Walter for constantly talking about Poison Idea, and then mentioning that you had some books, and then mentioning they were really great. And then I'm like, well, can I get a hold of you? And he goes, well, I don't know. And then I mysteriously received in the mail your book. I was so happy. And there was no email, but I decided I would just text you out of the blue. And here we are. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, Jerry A. Lang, 3-volume fantastic biography of his entire life almost, called Black Heart Fades Blue, available now. Look forward to a spoken word tour from him. If I have to get the cattle prod out, I just might. I love poking men in the ass. Just saying. Any last words? Any last thoughts? Any last links?
I'll be around. I'm not going nowhere. I'm here to stay now. Thank you. Thanks, guys, for having me on. It was a pleasure. And it, like I said, it warmed my heart. I loved it.
It was a pleasure, Jerry. Thank you.